This is episode 62 of the 1% podcast, and today we're going to be talking about losing a spouse to cancer, vulnerability, and creating a love that cancer can't kill with Mr. Brandon Janous. Enjoy.
You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome back to the 1% podcast. It's been a solid 6 months since we've had a new episode come out, and I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. If you haven't already, be sure to go to 1percentpodcast.com, sign up for our email list, and find us on Instagram and Facebook at 1% Podcast. Subscribe to the podcast so make sure you can get every new episode as it comes out. I've been really busy with the podcast for the past several months, collecting a lot of information, creating a lot of great content that I can't wait to share with you guys. Just to be transparent, though, I took a couple of months off. Lots of times when I develop these relationships with the people that have been on the show, we become friends, we have conversations, a lot of offline conversations, and you really get connected and you walk through everyone, as they go through their cancer journey. And one of the things that really, I don't know if it's just me or if it's everyone else, but I tend to get really connected to the people that share a similar story that I have. And unfortunately, I had about 4 people that I've interviewed before pass away last year on me, and it was really tough to really experience that kind of grief on my part. I'm sure it was even tougher for them and their families. But I've developed a relationship with several people, and we were stay connected, and we walk through this together. And that's what the podcast is all about, though. Whenever you're having a good time or a bad time, this is what the show is for. This is why I created the show. Just a reminder to everyone, whenever I was going through cancer, I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have anyone to talk about cancer with me. No one in my family had had cancer before, and none of my friends. I was young, 31, diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. So I was really just looking for something. So I'm glad to be back, glad to have this episode come out today. Man, today's episode, it just really did something to me. When I had this conversation with Mr. Brandon Janous a couple of weeks ago, he and I talked about what it was like to lose a spouse, like watch your spouse die one day at a time in the hospital. His spouse is Miss Rachel Janous. Rachel was back on the show in October of 2018. She was episode number 14. I highly suggest everyone go back and listen to episode 14. I've never went back and listened to an episode of someone that I've had on the show that has passed away until I went and listened to Rachel's episode. And wow, it just spoke to me in so many ways. There's so much relevance in everything that she said. But Brandon just had the guts to be on the show today. And man, I'm telling you, it's just a true honor to hear from Brandon. Man, just a story. Brandon and I did this interview just a month right after Rachel had passed away. So what caught my attention was, as Brandon continued to walk through his journey and navigate his life and his family's life once Rachel had passed away, they had a chance to talk about a lot of things that I thought were just phenomenal for everyone to hear. And Brandon's vulnerability is something that you don't see, especially from a lot of guys out there, people that are scared to have the conversation, scared to talk about death. And unfortunately, that is an outcome that we have to think about and we have to face sometimes that no one wants to talk about. But I'm really glad Brandon came on today's show and had a chance to talk about that. Man, Rachel was such a special, special person. Just getting to spend an hour of our time together several years ago and following her journey, all the way until March. It was just an honor to see her. And I'm so glad that she and I had an opportunity to connect. And, her story is not over. Rachel may have beat us to heaven, but her story continues to carry on, which is so amazing. And it carries on through Brandon and through a lot of the conversations that he has with his children. And he and I are going to discuss that. And I promise you today's episode is not a sad, serious episode. It is honestly, it's a very happy and uplifting episode as we celebrate Rachel's life and we talk about what's life like. I think that's something really important for everyone who may be facing this same situation. Maybe you may be losing your spouse. You may have just recently lost your spouse, or maybe you're having a tough time dealing with the loss of a loved one to cancer, just in general. Today's episode is really going to bring you a lot of peace and a lot of joy, and it's really going to help comfort you through these times. So I'm super excited to have you guys listen to Brandon and I's conversation. And like I said, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Let us know what you think about the episode. Just give Brandon some love, and be sure to follow the Janous 5 on Instagram and Brandon Janous on Facebook as well. I'm sure he'll love to hear your input on today's episode. Enjoy. All right, welcome everyone to a very special episode of the 1% Podcast. If you've been wondering where the 1% Podcast has been over the past several months, wonder no further. We are back here live with Mr. Brandon Janous. This evening, Brandon, we are in the middle of this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic. We're all stuck in the house together. We've had a lot of time to do a lot of reading and soul searching, and I know you have 3 children that's probably been driving you crazy just a little bit, having to be their teacher and dad and everything else around the house. But I'm so glad to have you on the show. To catch everyone up, Brandon is the husband of Rachel Janous. Rachel was on episode number 14 of the 1% Podcast. And when Rachel and I talked back in September of 2018, she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer in March of that year. She started all of her treatments in April and was just about to start the radiation process when we were talking. We discussed all the rounds of chemo, all the side effects, her telling her family. She even mentioned, I've got notes here that I took earlier, listen to the podcast again. Rachel and Brandon have 3 kids. Their whole life dramatically changed when they got that news. Brandon, you were on the phone with the doctor, she said, whenever she got the news, because you weren't there, you were able to hear everything. And we talked about you guys telling your children, and she had mentioned that you and your oldest daughter used to play golf together, and you took her to the golf course, and after that, you guys would have like a Pepsi and talk about everything. And that's how you brought up the conversation, which we're going to dive into a little bit today. But Rachel and I talked about the head shaving party that you guys had, and then the conversations that she had with her children, just telling her her side of the story to her kids about what to expect, what not to expect. You can still hug me. I'm a different kind of sick that you can't catch, kind of thing. But when Rachel's story ended, when she and I talked on the conversation, and back in 2018, I got to see kind of what progressed afterwards. And Brandon and I are on the podcast tonight because unfortunately Rachel passed away. She beat us. I would like to say she beat us to heaven on March the 1st of this year. And Brandon, what really caught my attention about you is your story of being a spouse. You're actually the first spouse I've had on the show of someone who just recently passed away from cancer and stuff. I've interviewed other people before, but this is pretty fresh. So I just want to thank you, before we even get started, for being so vulnerable, being open to the conversation. Your writing has just, I can't stop reading it. I know it's like a therapy for you to be able to express that. To express all the emotions. And for everyone out there, who's lost a loved one to cancer, I think our conversation tonight's really going to hit home. I think it's a very real, authentic conversation between 2 guys, just being emotional about things and talking about things that most people don't want to talk about. Brandon and I have promised each other there's not going to be a totally sad conversation we're going to have. It's going to have its moments, but it's going to be an uplifting conversation that a lot of people can get from, because if there's one thing that I took away from the conversation that Rachel and I had in the past, is she didn't want everyone to see her as, sick and dying. She wanted to see everyone to see cancer as a part of her story, but even more, she wanted everyone to see exactly how God was working in her life through such a terrible situation. And I think that no matter what level your faith is on, if you have a lot of faith or a little faith, if you share our views or not, that I think you're going to really be able to take a lot from our conversation tonight. So Brandon, welcome to the show. You and I were just joking about haircuts and stuff. I know you got a hat on. You beat me to I should have wore a hat tonight, but
Very
all good,
informal.
man. But welcome to the show, man. How you been doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. You caught me at a good time. I don't have anything to do, as well as anyone in the country. We have nothing to do, and so it's not like I could tell you I was busy. Not that I would have dodged you anyway, but I'm glad to be on. I enjoyed listening to Rachel do the podcast with you. Gosh, 2 years ago or whenever that was. It was a neat thing for her. It was an honor for her to be on and kind of share her story, and I'm glad to get to continue her story, because her story is far from over. Though she's dancing with Jesus in heaven now, there's still a lot of Rachel left here. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about what's going on there.
Awesome. So every now and then I go back and check all the stats for all the podcasts, and Rachel's episode has been downloaded more than any other episode that we've ever had on the show. And even over the past several months, like, her episodes have been downloaded hundreds of times each month. I don't know who's out there listening, whether it's family or friends or anybody else, but hearing her story, maybe, I think it continues to live on. And I think that's one amazing thing about her. When she and I talked before, that, no matter what the outcome was, she always wanted people to see, how great things could be. And, we weren't promised, one of the things she says, it's a scripture that you and I know a lot about, is, we're not always promised things are going to be great, but we're promised that we're never going to be alone. And for a lot of people that may have listened to the episode that may feel alone or whatever else, that, somebody like Rachel's voice continues to still carry on to the people out there. I don't know who downloads the show. You never know who's out there downloading the show, but people are out there still listening to her episode. So I think that's amazing. I've got several questions that I want to ask you, and I definitely want to get your perspective on everything. But before we kind of get into that, I would like for you to kind of catch us up. So let's say in October of 2018, Rachel was about to start radiation.
Right.
Can you tell us kind of what transpired from October 2018 until March?
Yeah. So it was such a roller coaster, and a lot of good in that roller coaster. She got first diagnosed, like you said, in March, started chemo in April of 18. And, we called it your run of the mill breast cancer, because she got it and we beat it. I mean, we were on the other side. She did the chemo, she did the radiation, she did the double mastectomy, she did a hysterectomy. She tested positive for the BRCA gene. So we were very aggressive in getting rid of it. And so we were on the other side. We took a trip to Palm Springs. We were celebrating, no more cancer. To me, it was over. Like, it was like, okay, we were just another statistic and we beat it, and, we're good. And I'm kind of the eternal optimist. And so for me, like, I never thought about it coming back. That was never even in my head. Whereas Rachel, she always knew it would. It wasn't the thought of it. She's like, I know it's going to. I just don't know whether that's, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 30 years from now. But I know God's never taken this off my heart. It is going to come back. And I used to really get upset about that, because I was over it. We did that chapter. I was good with it. I didn't need any more. And not that it was, as hard on me as it was her, but as a supporter, it's different. It really is. There's nothing you can do to fix it. And as a spouse, as a husband, my entire role in our marriage was to fix things, to make things better, to encourage and to equip and to lift her up. And it was just the first thing I couldn't fix. And so anyway, we were on the other side of the cancer battle. Everything was good. We had moved across to the country to Knoxville, Tennessee. We moved here in May. And in, I guess it was July, she started getting pain in her back. And for me, I'm thinking, welcome to being old. This is what happens. I hurt every day. This is not a big deal. I literally did not, it wasn't a concern to me at all. It was back pain. But it continued to get worse. Obviously, we went and saw our oncologist. It turns out it was cancer of her bones, metastatic breast cancer of her spine. And it had gotten into her bones. And for those that don't know this, and again, I know way too much. I know more than I ever wish to know about cancer, but a simple Google search will tell you that this is not curable. It's treatable, But once it's in the bones, they can't take out bones, right? So it's always going to be there. They can shrink it, they can make it smaller, you can live with it. But it was a little bit scary when I saw that. I said, man, like, this is different. So this is our life now. Like, there's going to be cancer forever. That's what we're dealing with at this point. But even then, it wasn't scary. We're thinking, okay, if you look at the survival rate, people live 20, 30 years with that. That's not common. It's 5 to 10, but why not us, right? We can beat the odds. And then quickly from July to, gosh, I guess it was December, she found out it was in her spinal fluid, or maybe that was January, early January. Found out it was in her spinal fluid, and then her brain. We found that all out in a matter of 48 hours. I was in LA. I was out there for a business trip. She called me, said, "Hey, this isn't good. It sounds like it's spread into my spinal fluid." Took a red eye home. Met with the neurologist the next day. And he said that it was in her brain as well. So then we had a decision to make, what are we going to treat? Because both of these are going to kill you, is pretty much what they told us. You pick one. What we're trying to figure out is what's hurting the most. And at the time, she was having these major headaches that were out of control and causing us to go to the ER a few times. Christmas Eve was, I think, our first time. And then we were in the ER 4 or 5 times from Christmas Eve to January 15th. And January 15th, we went into the hospital, never came out. Or January 13th. Went to the hospital and never left. And so, we knew we were up against a force that, other than I said it in a post I wrote. I said, medically speaking, we had no shot.
Right.
Medically speaking, there was no cure. There was no fixing this. Now, miraculously, anything's possible. We serve an amazing God, and we'll get into this, but there were miracles left and right going on in that hospital room. There were miracles all over the globe from what Rachel's story. The big one that we were hoping for didn't happen, and that was hard. But her story, again, I'll say it over and over again, impacted the lives of so many dang people, and again continues to. We all say we need to love more like Rachel, because even till her last breath, that's what she was doing. She was loving on people and preparing people for what life would look like when she wasn't with us anymore. So that was kind of a long story, but it came at us quick, man. It really did. We were over it. It came right back, and we didn't have a ton of time to prepare for what was next. But the time that we did have was pretty special.
So I know you spent 39 nights in the hospital.
Yeah.
So during those 39 nights, what kind of thoughts were you having? It's, the thought of seeing, your spouse there and knowing that we're not going in the right direction. What kind of thoughts were you having spending those nights there?
Man, when the cancer came back to her spine, we started having hard conversations. Because we know what was possible. We have all the faith in the world, but we know what's possible. We know that this could end fast. This could, maybe this is your last Christmas. Like, we had these conversations. So it forced us to have these things. To then when it got into the brain, like, a lot of these conversations were behind us. Like, we had really prepared ourselves for the worst. Even though we didn't want to think that way, we just prepared. What's this look like? What is this going to mean for me and the kids and, those around us? And, but when we got to the hospital, even when we went to the hospital, it wasn't supposed to be a 39-night stay. It was supposed to be in there, get some things figured out, and come home. Like, it wasn't supposed to, that was not the plan. About the third night we were there, she had 20 seizures in one night. And that's when we realized there wasn't turning back. The radiation, because she was getting radiation on her brain, was causing these things to happen. And that's when, I met with the doctors, and we decided that treatment wasn't working, treatment was hurting. And that was a hard conversation to have with her. The seizures for sure did some damage to the brain. Not crazy, if you weren't with her a lot, you wouldn't be able to tell, but her memory was not good at all. And so I had to continue to explain to her each day that we weren't getting treatment today, that we're resting today, that we're, the hardest thing I've ever had to do was each morning when she'd say, okay, what's the plan today? What are we doing today? And the plan was nothing. we were waiting for her to die is really what it came down to. And, again, we had faith, and we prayed, and we believed that something amazing could happen. But we got to the point where the doctors, who are amazing doctors, but just threw their arms up and said, it's just hurting more than anything. And you get to the point of no return sometimes, and that's where we were. That night when she had all the seizures, we thought we were going to lose her that night, as did the doctor. I remember the night doctor coming in and saying, she's not going to make it through this. One of these she will not come out of. And so we just prayed. It was myself and my sister-in-law, and we just prayed that God give her another day so the kids could come say bye. That's all it was. We just wanted the kids to come say bye. Now, Rachel's stubborn, and she and God both gave us about 34 more days of being around. But that night, all we wanted was just another day. That's all, because no one was ready for it. No one expected that to happen, right? And then we had this 34 days of what Rachel would call a beautiful time. Like, there was so much beauty in all the brokenness and all the things that were happening. People came into her room to be ministered to. It was an incredible, incredible thing. And the fourth floor of Park West Medical Center in Knoxville, Tennessee will never be the same. Lives were changed. People were turning to Jesus, not from Jesus, because of the story of Rachel Janous. And it's an impact that is impossible to explain if you weren't there. And I'm just glad I got to be there. I'm glad I got to be there every second and every night. And I hated having to be the one to explain to her how things weren't going better. But man, her attitude was awesome. One of the things she said, which I know you probably saw, was, I know I'm going to die. I know I'm not getting better. And really all I have left to give is Jesus right now. And so that was her main focus. And that's what she was doing every single day for anyone that would come into that room. And let me tell you, they had to move us into a bigger room because so many people flocked to that room throughout those 39 nights.
Can you maybe share one or two stories of the impact that she had in someone else's life in those 39 days she was in the hospital?
I could share 1,000 of them, and I don't even know where to go because they're still happening. I mean, I'm getting messages all the time of the impact Rachel's had on complete strangers. We heard of atheists turning to Jesus. It's not supposed to happen, man, when someone dies. And that was Rachel's thing. Her big fear was, I don't want me dying to cause people to turn from him. Because the miracle that we wanted to happen, we wanted her to get better. And we're all praying, and the whole world is praying is what it looked like. One of the blog posts I wrote got 1.5 million views, while I was in the hospital with her writing this little post. It just went crazy. And so people all over the globe were praying and sending things. And her biggest fear was not dying. It was that people would then turn away from him. But what happened, the complete opposite thing happened, and people turned to him because they saw the impact that not only Rachel was having, but more importantly, Jesus was having on our lives, on our children's lives, on our family's lives, on our friends' lives, and on that entire hospital's life. So we heard stories of atheists turning to Jesus. We heard stories of people that I got a message from a friend that she went to high school with, said, Brandon, I've never prayed, and I've been on my knees every night for Rachel, every night for your family. I can't stop praying. And again, I can't think of two great ones. There's just thousands of awesome stories that I get to read every night because they keep coming in. They don't stop. And it's such an encouragement to me to know. And I think, man, how blessed were we? You think about cancer and how hard cancer can be. You talked about before we got on about losing a few people that you've had these podcasts with, and that's hard to do because you get emotionally attached to these people. But I think of how lucky I was and how blessed I was to have 2 years of preparation for what might have been. Whereas if someone dies in a car accident tomorrow, you don't get that. Right. You don't get to plan for death. If that makes sense, right? You always say, if you could know how you want, how you're going to die, would you want to know? And a lot of people say, yeah, I'd like to know. I'd like to know when. When you know you're going to die, it's an amazing thing because you can prepare and you can have the tough conversations. Rachel had her entire memorial playlist ready to go. Like, we didn't have to pick any songs. She had it all figured out, right? She knew exactly what she wanted, how it wanted to go, the celebration that she wanted to have, the people that she wanted to be there. And she prepared myself and my children much better than we should be prepared for this chapter of our lives. Not to mention Corona thrown on top of all this, right? That's
Right.
another that's another thing that we weren't like. Rachel got out just in time because then the virus came, and we all say, I wonder what Rachel would think about, like, what would she be saying about all this? But man, she prepped us as well as she possibly could.
So I want to bring up your children for a second, because there's several things. Obviously, you guys have 3 kids, 3 young children. Younger children process things a little bit different. Sometimes they don't quite grasp the situation, I guess, as an adult would. There's a quote that I had written down from when Rachel and I talked last. And she said one of your daughters said to her, it's okay to have cancer. And Rachel was like, no, it's never okay to have cancer, right? No, cancer is not good. But your daughter's like, no, cancer is good, because if it happens to me, Mommy, I'll know how to handle it because of the way you did.
Mm.
And, hopefully that's obviously never the case. We never want that in your family. I think you've had enough to deal with, right? But the very fact that a child could see that and to learn that lesson without being told, I think it transcends more than we can even imagine or understand, that a child could process that. And, we teach the people around us, through our actions on basically, as a parent, how to live and how to move about life and process things. And we'll probably never know the extent of, what your children maybe have taken through this until they get to later points in their life when they have big things to overcome. But seeing, how Rachel handled this and how you're handling it right now, I'm sure is going a long way. How were your children throughout, those 39 nights that you guys were at the hospital?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I got a message from someone the other day, yesterday, a woman who's going through the exact same thing Rachel's going through and has kids about our same age, or same thing Rachel went through. And this lady's not going to make it, is what she said. And she said, I'm just so worried about my kids. Tell me my kids are going to be okay. Complete stranger. I have no idea who she is. And I told her, I said, listen, they're so resilient. I mean, like, I think I'm taking it a lot harder and I'm hurting a lot more. Kids are so resilient. And again, Rachel helped us heal through this. What the kids knew is that when Daddy came home, whenever Daddy was home at night, that means Mommy went to be with Jesus. And so the night I came home, March 1st, I got home about 9:30 p.m. She passed away at 4:34. And I walked in and gave my oldest a kiss, and she's 8 years old. And she said, Mommy's with Jesus, isn't she? You didn't have to tell her. And I said, yeah. She said, can I come sleep with you? I said, sure. So she came down, and then about 3 a.m., Cooper, my middle daughter, comes down in bed, and she sees me there, and she says, you're home. And I said, yeah. I said, you know why Daddy's home? She said, no. And I said, well, Mommy went to be with Jesus. She said, okay, Daddy. She got in bed with me. And then Macklin, my little man, came down about 6 a.m. and jumped into bed with me in the same conversation. He said, so Mommy's with Jesus now? I said, yeah. And he said, I'm just so glad you're home. And that's what they saw. Okay, they get Daddy back. Because for 39 nights, they didn't have either of us. They'd come see her at the hospital almost every day. Macklin, my little man, I mean, he's 5 years old, so for half his life, she's been sick, and though she was still working and doing things the first time around, Macklin would just go to the hospital bed and lay with her for hours and hours and hours. The doctors would come in and do what they needed to do, and Macklin wouldn't move. Like, that's Mommy's boy, and I'm gonna stick by Mommy. But man, they have given me so much strength. They have supported me through this. We've encouraged each other. We've not a day has gone by where one of us hasn't cried, if not all of us. But little things like learning to cook eggs. I'd never cooked eggs before, so I had to do that. And my little man was kind of teaching me how to do that. Just encouraging each other and wrapping our arms around each other and loving on each other. And, knowing that it's so hard with Corona because we don't know what the new normal is, right? We're trying to get this new normal, and then this happens. So there's nothing normal about what we're going through right now. But I almost look at it like, man, we get to be together a lot right now. Not that we weren't before, but even more so than there's nowhere to go. Like, we are a team. We went from the Janous 5 to the Janous 4, and we're gonna support each other right through this and love each other right through this. And it won't be easy, and there's going to be things that slap us in the face. But I mean, we got to remember they're 8, 7, and 5, right? So they can only think so much. Because even when I told them, when the doctors told us that mommy's not going to come home, and I had that conversation with them, it was such a hard conversation. We were all bawling. Hadley said, my 8-year-old said, "But guys, we get to have a stepmom now." So like that, their brains can only go so far, right? So like that was kind of her thing. Like, we get to have a stepmom. Like, some of my friends have a stepmom, and I said, well, it doesn't work quite like that. There's a little bit of a process here. But then it went from that to like she'd have nightmares about me bringing home a wicked stepmom. So like we're talking about kids here, so they only have so much they can handle. But man, they've just been. Rachel prepped us, bro. I mean, I can say that over and over and over again, but she prepared us to the point where she has friends of hers and my sister and other people doing things for us as a family, as in setting up the kids' doctor's appointments and making sure they have this on time and that on time, and things that I didn't do, Rachel was able to put into place to help us get through this. So is it easy? Absolutely not. But man, we are as prepared as we can be, and I lean on them just as much as they lean on me, for sure.
I want to read part of a post that you had written in one of your blogs. And forgive me if I can't get through this. I couldn't get through it earlier. So like I said, it might be two guys crying to each other in a second. But you wrote a post that was featured on lovewhatmatters.com. And you said, most days I find myself sitting in our closet floor, just like I am right now, where I can hide from the kids for 15 to 30 minutes and just cry. It's not that I don't want them to see me cry. Not a day has gone by we don't cry together. But these cries are different cries. They aren't just I miss her cries. Those happen all the time. These are I'm scared to death of life without her cries. They are how am I supposed to do this on my own cries. They are this wasn't supposed to happen to you and I wish it could have been me cries. They are that I can't even look at the photo or hear the song of thinking of you cries. That I'm sorry I didn't fight harder. I'm sorry I didn't do more. I'm sorry that it felt like we gave up cries. These cries are different cries. That's some very real moments where you're taking time to yourself. And when reading that, like I hear a couple of things. First thing is like, it's obviously very sad to know someone is going through that, just to feel that pain from one human to the other, just to hear someone, being vulnerable about those moments where it's just you sitting in your closet, processing everything. But I also see a very optimistic side of this post as well too. Number one is the fact that you're being completely vulnerable and open and honest for the world to hear, and that you are in the step of actually processing such a terrible loss. And I feel like a lot of people can get stuck in that grief cycle, right? Where it's, the why me, why us, where you have those moments, the moments of anger, the moments of sadness, the moments of, how am I supposed to even move forward, right? That's real life. That's true emotions. And that's things that everyone needs to feel and kind of go through that process. But, you being so vulnerable, kind of sharing that process and sharing that with so many people, I feel like people can look at your story and look at what you're going through and really connect to that in a lot of ways, especially us men who have a hard time maybe sharing how we feel about things. But having seeing a spouse, like when I see your posts, my immediate thought goes to, I put my spouse in Rachel's position and what would I do and how would I feel? And that's what makes me the most upset as well too. But just as your daughter had mentioned, if it happens to me, I don't know how to handle it. I think a lot of people can look at your story and say, if that happens or when that happens, maybe they are going to that moment where they know their spouse is about to pass away. I at least have some small blueprint, for what Brandon has went through. I know you probably wouldn't want to have that blueprint out there for everybody to see. But, this again is part of your story, helping so many people. But you're giving people a small blueprint on number one, especially men, on how to be vulnerable, how to express how you're feeling, and then how to really process all of that. And I think that's, again, a continuum of you guys' story together, and how, through Rachel's absence in our lives, she's continuing to have a great impact. But, you're the vessel now, right? You're carrying the torch on now of her life and in your life and your kids' lives together. And I think, again, I just want to applaud you so much for publicly doing that, because it's so important to hear that from people these days, because, these kind of stories probably aren't shared as much. And so I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing. How do you, if someone were to ask you, how you get the strength to be vulnerable like that, how would you answer that question?
Man, that's a really good question. And like we said when we were off air, the writing for me is therapy. That's my thing. And a good cry is good, man. I was talking to a friend today, and she said, I have a cry playlist. She lost her husband, and so she has a playlist where she just plays it and just cries and gets it out, because you just have to do it sometimes. And I'm not a big crier. That wasn't what I'd be known for, and I think when I made that post, I had some people that were really close to me that were like, man, I didn't realize that you were doing this every day. I didn't realize that you were crying every day, because it's not what I lead with. When my buddies call me and say, hey bro, yeah, I'm just in my closet crying, like that's not, as men, it's not what we lead with. I don't lead with, if I'm meeting someone new, hey, yeah, my wife just passed away, like that's not how we do it, and so I didn't make that post. I don't make any posts for sympathy. I don't make any posts for likes or follows. That to me is therapy, man. Like that's me getting it out. That's me expressing what I'm going through, and I feel so much better when I do. Again, not because I need people to feel sorry for me, because that's not what I want. But I do think, through some of the story and the posts that we've done, we have gained a little bit of a following, where if we can help the next person, and I mentioned the girl that reached out to me and said, help me, what do I do with my kids? How does this look? And those stories are often, and I hate that I'm in this fraternity. I hate that I have to be in this fraternity, but I am. There's no way around it. This is the fraternity that I'm in. And I hate that there's always more people in this fraternity. I've got a dear friend of mine who's losing his wife any second now, who can't be with her in the hospital because of what's going on right now. And I hate that I'm in that fraternity with him, and that I had to talk to him last night and talk to him about what's happening, and that he may not get to go say bye because they won't let him in. Like there's just, it's not a fun fraternity to be in, but I'm in it. And so if I can help one person, encourage them and equip them, and help a husband who's a supporter, a wife who's a support, because you know what? I wasn't the patient. I can't speak to that mode. I would have rather been the patient many times. I'd much rather Rachel be here than me, but that's not the hand I was given. And so as the support, I'm sure there's handbooks out there, but I never got one. So I just did the best I could. And like we talked about, we shared it with everyone. We were an open book because we thought, one, it'll cause awareness. Like Rachel was young and healthy, and cancer came. Like cancer doesn't discriminate. Number one, right? Number two, we wanted to share our faith through it. And probably faith first, and then it doesn't discriminate if we were doing it in the right order. But we wanted people to realize that God is bigger than cancer too. And Rachel's cured right now. That's what I said. Like she's cured, and she has no pain, and she's up there. Like I told my friend last night, she's going to be there to give your wife the biggest hug in the world. And it's not fun, bro, but this is the fraternity I'm in. So if we can help some others, like you do on a daily basis, just helping people talk through something that's not going away. It's not going away. And so if we can be a support system for people and help people to prepare better and understand better and encourage them through the process, then I'll do the rest. I'll spend the rest of my life doing that because I know there are people that did that for me during this journey as well.
I know processing definitely helps a lot, no matter what form it is, whether it's writing a blog post. Rachel mentioned a lot of times that she had a journal that she wrote in.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you had it. how many days have you went back and read some of that journal?
Yeah, man. Wow, that's so good, bro. And one day you'll see. So when she passed away, we were able to do a memorial service in Knoxville, and we were supposed to do it in Kansas City the next week, but because of the virus, we weren't able to. And there's a video that was done that has her reading her journal. One of them talk about not being able to get through something. And so I can't share that till we do the Kansas City Memorial for many reasons. One, that's where a lot of her life is, and I want them to be able to experience that there. But man, it was a beautiful thing. And so I don't want to give away a ton of the journal, but we've all read the journal. We've all read it. It almost reads like the Psalms. It's just so beautiful the way she wrote in this. So I would much rather her read it to you guys. One of my buddies came in one day and I didn't know what he was doing. He's the guy that ended up putting the video together, and just started asking her questions. And she just whipped out her journal and would read a page and then expand on it, and read a page and then expand on it. And we captured it all, and it's the most beautiful thing you'll ever hear. And it's hard to get through because it's Rachel in her own words. But dude, she was pissed sometimes. I don't know if I can say that on this, but she was angry. She was mad. She doubted. She was, but then it always came back to the beauty of Jesus and what he's doing. But I mean, it was not all joy, man. There's curse words in there. I mean, she was so angry when it came back, and she was so angry when it got worse, and she was so angry that she's going to leave her kids and her husband and not know, what's going to happen next. And but there was so much beauty in it, and it literally it's with me at all times. I don't go anywhere without it, because it's such an encouragement to me as well. So I can't wait to share that with you and the community for sure when the time's right.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. It gives us all something to look forward to.
Yeah.
If you had one or two pieces of specific advice for someone that has a spouse that's, in the process of passing away, or even if someone's spouse has cancer come back, whether it's dealing with children through the process or whatever else, what would you say?
You can't fix it. I beat myself up so many times, even gosh, the last couple of weeks for what could I have done better? Could we have done more? Should we have been at MD Anderson or Mayo, or you name the clinic? Should we have gone to, because I got every cure imaginable sent my way, every treatment imaginable sent my way. And did I not open it enough, or did I not run down this path or that path? But then the more I thought about it, I'm not God, bro. Like I can't fix it, nor can you. And so don't beat yourself up for not being able to fix this. Being present, being there, being by her side, continuing to talk about it, not avoiding it, being open about it. And again, we're a lot more open than a lot of people are. So you don't have to share your story with the world like we did. That's just something we decided early on we were going to do. A lot of people don't. But my biggest thing was I wish someone would have just told me, it's okay. You can't fix it. There's no right or wrong answer. Because Rachel said the same thing. She's like, well, what if we would have picked this option instead of this, or that option, or gone down this? But we're not God, man. Like Rachel didn't live a day longer than she was supposed to.
Right.
And she didn't die a day sooner than she was supposed to. None of us do. And so that was a big weight lifted off me when I realized, like, I couldn't have done anything more, as far as fixing it.
Right.
Patience, just be patient. I beat myself up a little bit about that, especially towards the end when she would forget everything and I'd get frustrated, and she never noticed it, but I did. Like I was explaining it over and over and over and over again, and it's what we did. It wasn't fun for me to tell you we're not getting treatment anymore. It wasn't fun for me to tell you we're going to die. It wasn't fun. So just patience with the whole process. So be patient, be present, and don't be God, because you're not. You can't fix it, but just be an encourager and be as present as you can during that process.
I love it. One of the last questions I typically ask, most of my guests on the show is a question that I think everybody probably wants to know the answer to, coming from you and your situation. The last question I ask people typically is, what's the best thing cancer has done for your life?
Mm.
And, obviously cancer was the cause of your wife not being here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you answer that question?
Wow. Man, he didn't prep me offline here, guys. um, oh man. Gosh, I can think of a million things that happened leading up to the diagnosis that God put in place. That's a whole nother podcast, but I could tell you a million things that just lined up that were perfect. Everything from having amazing insurance that we didn't have a year before. You don't think about that before you have cancer. You don't think about how having good insurance matters until you need good insurance, right? You don't think about her parents. Her parents retired the year before and they were able to spend every moment with us. You don't think about those things till you need them to be there every moment. All these things that happen. My parents moved a mile away from us. All these things lined up. The job I had where I could take literally 3 months off and continue to get a paycheck, not have to worry about a thing, nothing changed. I came back. I'm still kind of getting back. I'm not even fully back. And all the grace in the world to where, there's so many things. But if I had to answer that question, gosh, man, it taught me how to love better, I guess would be the best way I could share that. It taught me how to love better. It taught me perspective. It taught me that most things don't stinking matter. They just don't matter, dude. Like I was telling a friend the other night, in 2 years, Rachel and I had 0 arguments because nothing mattered, man. Like the only thing that mattered was getting her better and making sure my kids were okay. Think about all the silly arguments you have as couples, as friends. None of it mattered, dude. And not that we argued a lot to begin with, but there was nothing worth being upset about. There was nothing worth being stressing about. There's a lot of things going on in this world that are hard right now. But the things that we stressed about in 2010 through 17 versus the things we stressed about in 18 through 20, there wasn't any, bro. It just wasn't worth it. And so it taught us to love better each other and others, to give a lot of grace, and realize, what really matters. And most things just don't stinking matter. So that would be my answer to that.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think you couldn't have given a better answer. How to love better. It's and you should have those moments where you hate the word cancer, right? Because that's why we're having this conversation. And Rachel, we felt the same way. Anyone who's experienced that, it's real easy to hate the cause, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the grief cycle and the process. That's being mad at that, but then coming back full circle.
Yeah.
Again, I love how you can look back on this time of the saddest moment, I would say probably in your life, and how the saddest moment, how losing someone that you love taught you actually how to love better. And that's simply amazing. Well, Brandon, I've for the past month or so, before I even reached out to you, honestly, it took some guts for me to even just reach out to you, to be completely transparent, because I didn't want to, I know this just happened a little over a month ago. And it's definitely still a day-to-day process, and it will be for a while, but the courage that you have to come on to the show and talk to the people. And what's so wonderful about having a podcast is this will hit the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And you and I will probably never know. And people will hear the words that you've spoken tonight and hear our conversation, and it'll really get them through those tough moments. And that's why we're here. That's why, I don't make a dime off this podcast, and I don't want to, you know what I mean? It's just for everybody else to really kind of hit you in that moment where you need that boost. And, somebody who carries such a weight every day, like you be able to lend yourself to everyone for the past, hour or so that we've been chatting, I think has been absolutely amazing. If you guys want to connect with Brandon, he says he's the only Brandon Janous on Facebook. So be sure just to look him up on Facebook, connect him, send him a message. And on Instagram, you guys can connect with the Janous 5. That's TheJanous and the number 5. And I'm sure Brandon would be happy to hear your story, hear how our conversation tonight has impacted you. If you're going through a difficult time, through the moment where we're all quarantined right now, wherever this episode, whenever you hear this episode, just remember we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. But we're using Zoom to the best of our advantage over here, and having this conversation to really be able to share this with everyone. So, Brandon, thank you again, man, for being a part of the show. Your story touched my life, and it's touched millions of other people. And Rachel, still continues to touch people's lives. And what a glorious thing, man! What a wonderful person. Just being able to have that conversation, the hour-long conversation she and I had a couple of years ago. I don't forget it. I never will. And I'm excited to have you guys both on the show. And I look forward to people connecting with you and looking forward to your story really continuing to reach people.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for continuing to allow Rachel's story to live on through your podcast and other avenues. So I appreciate you, man. And thanks for reaching out. This was an honor to do this. And I love that you continue to raise awareness for something that sucks so bad. But there is beauty. There is beauty in all these different stories for sure. You just got to dig deep sometimes to find them. So I appreciate you digging deep, bro.
Thank you.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.